and tell us if you will strongly agree or disagree in the sidebar. So I got a question for you this morning, Mr. Hanley. I was speaking to a manufacturer yesterday, won't mention any names here, and I, of course, was there to motivate their dealers to be awesome at digital. Love this company. What the manufacturer is starting to do is they're starting to essentially do all the digital for their dealers. In other words, they are giving them a website and they are putting it all out there because basically they have said they're just never really going to do it well. No matter how many talks we give them on digital, they're never going to do it well. True or false? What say you, man? What's your thoughts on this? In other words, should a manufacturer or anybody that has dealers be a digital babysitter? Because to me, that is a slippery slope.
Well, first, I love the term digital babysitter.
Thank you.
That is fantastic on a lot of reasons. This is what I'd say. I think you can pop a Smurf a lot of this stuff, but at a certain point, there's gonna be a disconnect, right? Like at a certain point, you don't have local, if that's what most of these dealerships are built in the community, right? Usually either the franchise owner is standing up there and pointing at their Fords or Hondas or whatever and telling how those cars separate. I mean, that's what the commercial is all based on, either the manager or the owner, their personality.
Here's the thing.
I think
it's almost like we're accepting mediocrity and we're saying nobody's ever going to.
Well, so here's my point. There are two different things at play here. The first is the larger entity, the dealership network owner, the manufacturer itself. They have to do something. They can't just rest on the fact that, right, the country was founded on capitalism. We're skewing towards socialism today, but this is
we had a political comment on the hot seat.
So in a capitalist environment, these people, there are going to be people who fit the wide range, right? And as much as we would love to prop up those who aren't that good, I think what they should do is focus 90% of their effort on the top 25% and then provide tools and resources for the 75% to at least not do nothing, right? Because they have to, this is all their dealers. So unless they're willing to just cut them, then they need to help them in some regard. So, yeah.
Doc in the sidebar, because we're of course recording this live on Blab, says, make America great again. Well said. Okay, I want to move past this point, but let me just say this. What happens inevitably is when you start creating all these websites for dealers, for sub companies under your umbrella, you become a babysitter. You start to inherit a bunch of problems that shouldn't be yours. When people's websites and whatnot are not doing well, they tend to blame you. They don't look in the mirror. I think it's a very slippery thing. River Pools is now a manufacturer, Hanley. We are going to have a ton of dealers with our fiberglass pools. I do not want to get in the business of doing their work for them and propping them up, even though here's the thing. I want to be the best in the world with our website. And if I focus all that attention on being the best in the world on our website, the dealers will naturally benefit, whether or not they stink up the joint or not.
Is that different in the car industry, though? Isn't the relationship between your relationship with the dealers going to be significantly different than, say, a Honda dealer and Honda? To me, it seems like they're much more married. That's much more of a direct relationship.
Well, yeah, and I don't know how that works in that space. I don't know if Honda is actually building out the websites of their peeps. I don't think they are, because they're like, man, I don't even want to go there. We got enough of a marriage with these people.
I'm not saying they should do that. I think there is a baseline level of training and resources that they could provide to these people, but that the majority of their focus should be on those who are like willing to come to an event and really digest, maybe workshop, something like that. The people who are willing to take this to the next level is where you should spend your time. The bottom 75% should just be, hey, if you want, the resources are here and you got to do your thing.
Yeah, time will tell. Okay. I got to point out, I like to point out companies that are doing great things, big and small brands, small businesses. Talked about Bass Pro Shops last week. I found a company that I think is doing content marketing even better. That's big. Okay. That's leveraging, that's doing what we call insourcing, leveraging their existing talent. The company is one that we have all heard of. It is Home Depot. Now, listen, I'm going to put a link in the sidebar that I'm totally down with. This is a classic example of doing everything right to me, Hanley. Everything right. Everything. It's like literally everything right. I want to break down this article, why it's so stinking wonderful. It's like, I wish everybody watched this or just like followed this. Okay, so the Home Depot staff posts this article, which is DIY mosaic tile backsplash. First of all, it's a glorious long tail keyword phrase. It was like somebody that was actually thinking about SEO here, which lots of times bigger brands, they forget about SEO, which is ridiculous, and that's it. The second element of this article, if you go there and see, it's totally integrated with Pinterest. It is looking really, really sharp. The third element of this article that is really, really good, of course, they're so smart with this because Home Depot tells you everything that you need, and they link to the product page of their website that, of course, can sell you that thing. But it ain't salesy, right? They don't have to pitch everything because it's understood. And then they take the time to truly walk you through this process of doing a DIY mosaic tile backsplash in your home. It's beautiful. It's glorious. This is how big companies can do this effectively, even small businesses. Everything was like down the list. Visually, it's right. SEO-wise, it's right. I mean, it's like everything about it is like Pinterest-wise, it's right. Conversion-wise, it's right. Props to the Home Depot on this.
This is the perfect example of actual content marketing at a big brand scale. Mm-hmm. For too long, big brands have taken on content marketing with an advertising hat. They're like, we're going to do content marketing this year. Let's do all these things we did when we were advertising focused. And then it doesn't work, right? And I know we're going to actually get to some of this. This actually is talking about a point that we're going to get to here in a couple minutes with another resource that you want to talk about. But yes. To me, this is what big brand content marketing actually looks like versus what it has been confused with for so long, which is just advertising. So a moving banner ad is not content marketing, right? That's just a different form of advertising. This is true content marketing at a big brand scale, done incredibly well. This can be scaled down all the way to the smallest business. All the elements, all the foundational principles that you and I preach and teach every single day are in everything that Home Depot is doing today, and I absolutely love it. It's a cornerstone, or it's a pinnacle example. My brain isn't working today.
It's obviously a really good example. In other words,
this is very good. This is a very good example.
Hey, yeah. Okay. So we're looking at somebody that's doing it right, that's figuring out. Hey, look, you just had your second child. Okay, everybody understands you've been up all night changing diapers. Okay, so we see Home Depot doing it right, and how that applies, it trickles down to every size business, big brand to medium to small, doing it right. Then I want to look at an example of something that I was reading, and again, we see a company here that can't necessarily find its way. There is a magical article about Yahoo on that was in the New York Times. And the New York Times does produce some great stinking content. I mean, God bless them. They really, really do. The title of the article is Transformation at, by the way, this is our News for Nerds section. We always like have a little News for Nerds. This is kind of our News for Nerds today. So Transformation at Yahoo, foiled by Marissa Mayer's inability to be the farm, or bet the farm, excuse me. Now, there's a whole lot that's going on here, Hanley. But to make a long story short, we all know Yahoo is really, really struggling. In fact, a huge portion of the company, the leadership, the ownership group is pushing them to sell off the website of their business. Okay, there's a bunch of just a crap storm. Okay, so I want to read one paragraph from this, but again, I want to talk about how it applies to all of us. Okay, so yet the initial in the author, I put the link on there, so just check it out because the author is great. Is really, really smart guy. Love his stuff. Yet the initial success, followed by recent sluggishness, is beside the point. The larger story of Miss Mayer's tenure at Yahoo is one of a transformation so modest it borders on stasis. Overall, Yahoo remains much the same business it was 3 years ago. It is a far-flung collection of news, entertainment, and communications destinations supported by ads. Miss Mayer was hired to build something novel. Instead, at best, she appears to be building a better Yahoo with debatable results. Dang, this is good stuff, and I'm going to tell you why. And then I really want to hear your thoughts. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you got to sell the farm. When in the earlier days, 6-7 years ago, River Pools, I made one of the best decisions that I've ever made. And that was I had this amazing retail store, Hanley. It was one of the best like backyard retail stores in Virginia. We sold pool tables. We sold above ground pools. We sold tanning beds. I mean, we sold it all, Hanley. We sold saunas. We sold all of it. But I realized that we couldn't focus on anything well. We were hemorrhaging money. In the moment that we got out of our lease. And I spent a lot of money to get out of the lease. And I said, we're going to be the best fiberglass pool builders in the world. And we're only going to do this thing called digital marketing. That's going to be our focus. That's it. In other words, like Good to Great, we sold the farms. Everything changed from that point on. It seems like Yahoo, and I know Marissa Mayer is a lot smarter than me, so I'm not trying to compare me with her, but it seems like she hasn't been willing to make the big move. True. Well, I don't even want to go down there. I don't think she's been willing to make the big move in order to do something amazing to save a brand. Companies, big and small, we've got to be willing to do big things if we have reached a point of stasis or going backwards, because if you're at stasis, you're going backwards anyway. We better be willing to sell the farms in order to be effective and successful.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you why her philosophy is going to fail, and she's doomed to fail in every job she has until she changes this. She implemented rank and yank when she got to Yahoo. For those that don't know what rank and yank is, you rank your employees and the top 10 or the bottom 10 get cut every time. And then you hire more and you re-rank them and the bottom 10 get cut and you re-rank them and the bottom 10 get cut.
Which was established by the famous
Jack Welch.
Jack Welch, right.
Go through a complete renaissance after Welch. I mean, everyone holds up Jack Welch as like this god to innovation, and what you see is he had this really high curve, and then all of a sudden GE went, and GE's had to completely reinvent themselves, which they're doing an incredible job of today. And you just see some of the things. I mean, the marketing aside, the business decisions that they're making and the divisions that they're selling off and how they're focusing is incredible. But they have done away with rank and yank. And so I've been reading on this Yahoo thing because I just love how leadership aspects inside of big companies and all this stuff. When I read that she put rank and yank into Yahoo, I was like, she's screwed. She's screwed, because what it does is it creates a culture of not healthy competition inside a business. It creates a culture of, Marcus, if we have similar jobs, I'm going to do everything I can to undercut you because I don't want to be part of that 10% that gets cut out of here. They have a huge brain drain problem, and I don't even know if they have the internal staff, the minds inside that company anymore to do the things they need to do to be successful. So I think Yahoo is screwed. I think that, I don't know where she came up with that, because everything I know about Google's philosophy was not that. So for her to come from there to this, and then to me, it seems ludicrous. And it seems to me more like she wants to be a glamour CEO than really be a CEO, because she hasn't made the hard decisions that I think they thought she would make when she got there. And
that's what it takes. It's what it takes.
Yeah.
Hard decisions. Catherine on the sidebar says, I worked as a senior BU manager under the Jack Welch regime. The rank and yank process was awful. Interesting points indeed. Very, very interesting points. Hanley, moving on to DDYST, dude, did you see that? Man, broskies. So we've been talking about ad blocker, and I go to Forbes this morning, and I don't think I can show it as an image. I tried to paste it in, but obviously it didn't work. So I went to Forbes this morning, and this is what I read. I read, it looks like you're using an ad blocker. please turn it off in order to continue into Forbes's ad light experience, which was, I thought, the funniest freaking thing I have read in a long time. Forbes and ad light being in the same sentence. This was hilarious. I was dying when I saw it. Has anybody else that is using an ad blocker, have you gone, because I know a lot of people don't in the marketing space, and I do and do not. I kind of come in and come out of it playing with it. This is hilarious because, of course, a couple of people told me after I tweeted this out this morning, Hanley, that when they went to Forbes and they saw this, they tried to turn off their ad blocker, and they still couldn't get in after they turned it off, and they were getting the message that, hey, you ain't going to come play here if you've got an ad blocker on. So what do you think?
Yeah, because you have to reset your whole cache, and there's like a whole process to it. First of all, Forbes and ad light is like an oxymoron.
The number one oxymoron in the history of the internet. Forbes and ad light, yeah.
So if you want to read Forbes, read it through Yahoo News or through LinkedIn Pulse or something. Don't go to Forbes.com. It's horrifying. That being said, I think that this is a trend, and I understand
no doubt
why Forbes would do this. I understand why they would put this on here. I think that their native ad process on their site is horrifying, but so it's part of the problem. But like, I get why they're doing it. I think it's going to happen more, especially for the websites that base their revenue on ad blocker. I think it's going to happen. Is this a paid product placement? No, it's not. I'll pull it back a little bit.
Hey, Tim from Stone and Press says F1 drivers have less ads on them than Forbes. I know. The fact that they had the audacity to say, come experience our ad light. Our ad light is this is the classic. This is the greatest internet oxymoron in the history of the world. Somebody needs to do a meme like that says ad light, and then it's like got this Forbes experience coming in and out of the deal. So that would be hilarious. Okay, so Hanley, we continue. I want to have a final conversation, the hot seat side of this. I got somebody walking in my hotel room right now. I got somebody. I want to talk about a great article, tremendous article that our friend Joe Pulizzi wrote, and I know you've looked at it. I've looked at it. I don't know your thoughts on it yet, because we share the content, but we don't give each other the thoughts before these episodes. That way it's all fresh and fancy free. And so, great article at CMI, the Content Marketing Institute, that says content marketing, it's going to get weird. It's going to get weird. So this is really, really solid. Do you want to start on this one, brother? Because this is great stuff. A lot of people are already talking about it. Well done, Pulizzi. Wait. We're both at 666 right now. This is on Blab. We're both at 6. This is really weird. Thank you for doing that. All right, keep going. Keep going, Hanley.
So I think this is going to be one of the cornerstone articles, at least for the first quarter in the content marketing space. I think it's absolutely incredible. Joe knocked it out of the park with this one in terms of bringing this to the forefront. I think it's going to spur a lot of conversation. You're going to hear all the Content Marketing and Marketing podcasts dial in on this one, and there's a reason for it. And I think it goes back to what we talked about with Home Depot. So when I read this article, I immediately thought of the Home Depot topic that we were going to talk about today, because I think what we're seeing is a pullback in what was misconstrued as content marketing, but was actually just the same old advertising packaged in a different way. I think that if you took Home Depot and put them against what Joe is talking about here, they would probably say that they're killing it with this strategy, where so many companies are doing content marketing, but it's really just a different form or a repackaged form of advertising. And that's that pullback you're seeing, because they're going, wow, we got into this and now it's not working as well. And for those who haven't read the article, basically what Joe said is, for the first time in how many years, I can't remember, Content Marketing Institute does their annual state of content marketing report I'll get the official name here in a second. 2016 Content Marketing Benchmarks, Budgets, and Trends Research. They do this every year. And for the first year in like a while, 3 or 4 or 5 years, something, they actually had a pullback in the effectiveness of content marketing of their respondents. And that to me is not an indictment of the process and the strategy of content marketing in and of itself. It is an indictment of how I believe companies have been misusing it for so long, and the realities of not following the basic foundational principles of content marketing are starting to come back to slap them in the face. So
I look at this and I put a quote for those that are watching live on Blab. I put a quote in the sidebar from Joe, and essentially the core of the article is Joe is comparing content marketing to the Gartner's hype model, which is basically something starts really low and then it develops a whole bunch of momentum and everybody's doing it and talking about it. And then it really takes a big dive, right? And then what happens after that? The cream, as mentioned by a few folks watching live, the cream starts to rise to the top. Now, let me read this quote and give a couple thoughts on cream here. Joe says, the reasons why marketers are disillusioned with content marketing are varied. Companies focus on campaigns instead of ongoing programs, publish content that's brand focused rather than audience focused, or produce content that's undifferentiated in any way. Goals like engagement don't connect to long-term results, and the lack of audience building in any way shocks and astonishes me. Here is what I believe. Now is when we will witness the greatest content marketing failures of all time. Mm-hmm. And right now, we will also see some of the greatest success stories of all time. So this is super, super interesting. Well said, Mr. Polizzi. Here's the thing about rising to the top. Never in the history of the world has the cream always risen to the top. People, especially when it comes to content, people have always produced great stuff. They never got seen. There's been more incredible should have been bestsellers, should have been classics that we haven't seen, Hanley, than we have. So was it 500 years ago, was it the fault of the system? Was it the fault that they didn't have digital? I mean, you look at Herman Melville. Moby Dick itself wasn't even a bestseller until after the dude was long dead. It wasn't a classic, and he never even found out that it was he thought it was a failure, essentially. And we see this again and again. And so as a whole, over the history of the world, cream has risen. But when you blanket the whole thing, of course, cream never rises to the top, and that's something that we as people have to accept. And of course, we can't allow the inefficiencies of many to, it's almost like when somebody goes to church, let's say somebody came to my church, Hanley, and they talked to a couple weird members of the church, which there's clearly weird members in my church and every church in the world. Just because somebody's weird, or just because somebody doesn't do this and that, is that an indictment on the church? I think what represents the church is the doctrine of the church, not the people therein. Now, the people, yes, are symbolic of it, and they ideally should follow it, but they're screwed up people everywhere. They're not an indictment on, just like there's, a couple bad, all these terrorists aren't, it's not an indictment on the Muslim religion. I mean, stuff like that, right? And so if we look at this, we got to be really, really careful, because all of a sudden everybody wants to say right now, either social media is dead or content marketing is dead. And I say, that's a bunch of horse doo-doo.
People are saying that? God, I hope not. Those people would be dumb, I would say.
Yeah. Jen on the sidebar, I have to say this, Jen on the sidebar says, the phrase, it is dead, should be dead. Amen to that, Jen. Amen to that.
By the way, Jen is crushing it today.
Jen is crushing it today. And those that are watching live are really, really crushing it today. Hanley, why don't we close this episode out? You go ahead and give your final, what's your one takeaway from this day as you consider this fast and furious episode of The Hot Seat, which we hope everybody is listening to and sharing it to their friends, and you're subscribing to it on iTunes, because that's where you can find it, y'all.
Yeah. So my Fast and Furious. My Fast and Furious takeaway, I don't know if we're calling it that, but that's what I'll call it today, is that everything in content marketing and digital marketing and marketing, right? I read an article the other day on Adweek, the PepsiCo director of marketing or vice president of marketing said at their big convention that it's not digital marketing, it's just marketing. Digital happens to be a piece of it. It always comes back to the foundational principles of educate, entertain, inspire, tell your story, the 5 questions that you talk about all the time. I mean, this is what works. It works every time. There are many different ways to package it up. You can be creative with it. You can be very straightforward. You can be professional. You infuse your brand. There's all these different little things that fit into it. But the core foundational principles of content marketing work every single time for every size business. And if you have the intestinal fortitude to stick to those principles and not chase the money and chase these crazy things that come out, you will be successful. It's what we saw in Home Depot. And the results that Joe Pulizzi is talking about are people who start chasing things and chasing the dollar and thinking about 1 quarter ROI and all this crap. And that's where all this negativity comes from. So I absolutely believe that if you stick to the foundational principles, inject your brand, your personality, a little bit of creativity, you will be successful no matter what size business you work with. Not easy, but simple.
Bro, my one thing for today is that although content marketing, as it's called, doesn't always work, certainly great communication and teaching does. And it will never die. It will never go away. It's going to be as relevant, great teaching, great communication in 20 years as much as it is right now. And I think the companies that adhere to this philosophy of let's be the best teachers in the world, they're going to be the ones that are most successful. And the companies that are willing to accept when they have lost their way and that ain't right, like Yahoo, if they're willing to sell the farm, if they're willing to make that dramatic shift focusing on the consumer, they just might save themselves as well. I have experienced that. I've lived it with river pools. And the principles that we're talking about are true from the biggest of the bigs to the smallest of the smalls. And that'll do it for this week's episode of The Hot Seat. Everybody, share it on iTunes, on SoundCloud, on the Stitchers. We're everywhere right now. And we are certainly grateful. Well, we will be, I'm sure soon.
We will be.
But anyway, thank y'all for joining. Hopefully you enjoyed the episode. You were great in the sidebar today. Hanley, weren't they awesome?
Awesome sidebar. Actually,
killing today.
Courtney said today,